So what are we doing? What are we doing? So we're doing product development. We're doing, let's finish this session. We're doing open lesson. And the reason is I've recently sort of renamed a bit the concept of, well, essentially, just a recap for if you're new, if you're new to what open lesson is. Open lesson was born out of the YouTube channel that I started where I was learning out loud quantum computing. You can still obviously go and check this channel out. I'm uploading the videos there all the time, so you can go to YouTube and go to uncertain systems. All right, and that's the recent ones. I'm also uploading these videos that I'm doing on X. I'm uploading them here as well. Okay, so and essentially what you can do is you can look at the playlists. You can look at the playlists, and here you'll see there's a quantum computing from 0 to 1, which is about 300 different videos where I learned, and these are from 2019. This is where I was learning basically live. I was doing live streams and sessions, learning about quantum computing, putting all the thoughts out there, first without any camera, and then I added camera later on. It's tons of videos. Anyway, I think over the years, and this led to a few very special. Let me go to my bookmarks, and there's some special. I have them very special. So I have actually these guys. So I have here. Yes, this is actually a very special moment for me because this is the this was August last year. And I presented Omega Quest to the Carpathis contest on this payout challenge that he made. Omega Quest now leads to the Omega Quest alt website, which was more sort of like an in-between data collection project that I made. But essentially, that's what really gave birth to Open Lesson, right? And uncertain systems. So I got first spot for the submission, so I won the contest, and that's what inspired the whole thing. The whole thing is, basically think out loud. Okay, so it's essentially a think aloud protocol, a think aloud tool that makes learning chill, and it's basically geared towards making you get to your first insight moment, like a eureka moment, aha moment, quickly, right? It implements the Socratic method, and it implements a think aloud protocol. Now, the more that I build these, right, there's a few things in here that I need to polish, because there is the concept of the workspace that in a way is kind of like the step in between, right? So you're not jumping right away to a concept. You can create a workspace. I can show some of the workspaces that I have here. Like, for example, we made a workspace on P versus NP, and so that's what a workspace looks like, right? So the workspace is basically a point. It's kind of it's a workspace. It's where you basically have the sessions that you want to work with, and I'm not sure if sessions is the right naming for these. These used to be called learning plan. I've just rebranded it to workspace because it has now a lot of built-in tools. So you're here and you can actually talk to the builder, and you can modify your workspace. You can talk about performance, and you can ask it like, hey, what am I struggling with, right? And then it's looking at the data of the different sessions you've done. And in this case, we've only done some session. I don't think there's a lot of data. I think this was a dummy test, so I don't think it's going to tell me much. Only one user is a session peer provided. Yes, it's a 90-minute session. Okay, so clear strike at the very beginning of the foundation model. Yeah, I mean, I have to still work on this, right? But essentially, you can chat with the performance of your session. You can have notes, and you can add files in here. I am at a point in time where I think the workspace concept is kind of one of the key points that is going to help me differentiate as well the product from other tools out there, right? Because that's kind of your starting point. Your starting point, it's like your launch pad, right, to the different sessions, because here you have the sessions. When you get into the sessions, I think I'm happy with what I have. If I jump into this session, right, I pick my tutor language. I pick what's the aesthetics that I want to be inspired with. Let's say we want to go with architecture. And that basically gets you into the integrated learning environment, which you're all familiar with. So here's where you start with Helios. Helios is your tutor. It's kind of welcome you to your integrated learning environment, and you can start the session. We'll actually start the speakers. Let's see if I can connect the speakers. Yep, perfect. So I can now I can go ahead and start talking to the tutor if I want to, right? So I have basically hello. Yeah, so you can see that my text is appearing here at the bottom of the screen as I speak, and I can submit that to the tutor, and we're essentially having a conversation where I have to go through the chapters, and it's a think aloud protocol, right? The way you talk to the tutor is by thinking out loud. And there is a few things that I need to polish, of course. There is still a few things around data input, right? It's not obvious. Obviously, you can go here, enable Muse if you have your like an EEG device. You can turn on the webcam. You can share your screen. I still have to polish those parts of the ILE. But for most of it, it's actually pretty mature. I'm happy with how this looks like. You kind of have your Helios panel here with the chapters and whatnot, and that's kind of good. And that's essentially your session, right? Let's go. Let's pause and go to dashboard. And what I wanted to go is to the workspace, and this actually should go to the workspace really. But here there's also a few things I'm adding. I'm also adding a teach back feature now. So I've added the teach back feature where essentially when you're kind of confident enough, I just don't know how to. I don't know how to put it, how to like blend it well with the product. By the way, so I'm still struggling a bit with these. And where am I? Here. So the idea of a teach back is you get into a conversation with your workspace, right? So you're getting into a session that you can time box it to like 5 minutes, and you can, what's the listener? It's like you're teaching it back to someone who is a curious beginner, for example. You can pick up a voice and start.
I'm new to this. Can you teach me what this workspace is about?
What questions do you have?
I'm curious about this P versus NP thing. Can you start by telling me what the workspace is trying to explain? Once you start, I'll ask questions as we go to make sure I follow.
Yeah. Okay. So P and NP is basically it's two common ways that we use to define classes of complexity in computer science.
Got it. So it's about grouping problems in computer science by how hard they are to solve. What does complexity mean here? How hard it is for a computer to solve something?
Okay, so you get the gist of it, right? I can end and reflect. The idea is it's not anymore a tutoring session. It's more if you're now on the driving seat, so you're now the teacher, right? And then basically it's kind of like gonna give you a bit of a summary of how well you've done this. And I have to find a way to go back to the workspace. This is stupid. But it's not. I'm not too happy how this is embedded here. Again, remember, one of the things that I want to do is I also want to sell these. I also want to kind of build. So here we have some solutions, right? So I'm very much focusing on sales training and hiring assessments as use cases. So this is actually the one that I've have the most worked out, right? I evaluate how candidates think, not just what they recall. So Open Lesson combines a think aloud protocol with a Socratic AI that reveals deep reasoning signals. That's gonna basically help you pick the right candidate in hiring process, right? The idea is don't give a take-home assignment to your candidates. Give them an actual access to a workspace, to an Open Lesson workspace, and then let them go through the stuff, right? And then essentially you have access to the performance of that workspace, and then you can just chat with the AI and help yourself, like help pick the right candidate for this kind of stuff. So this is I wanna start shaping the tool so that these kind of use cases are easier to pitch, because currently here. So you're in this workspace, and I think it's kind of still a bit chaotic, as in like it doesn't really. I'm not so sure if it's easy to understand what's going on, right? And yes, you have like some sharing controls and whatnot. You can make the workspace like a group workspace. You can make it public. You can fork a workspace. This is all good, but I'm lacking a way to scale that or to do a bit of product to develop that part of the product a bit more towards the goal of empowering these kind of use cases, right? And I am like, I'm just basically now brainstorming, right, with you guys. So I'm kind of like having a bit of a think aloud session myself on these. Also, it doesn't work perfectly, right? Because I have to tune a few things. So for example, one thing that I don't like that it currently does is that if I give it a one of the links of the hackathon submissions, like this one, for example, what I'd expect is if I want to create a workspace and say, hey, help me understand the theory behind this project, right? And I put in the link and I generate the workspace. What I would expect it to do is I would expect it to build me a workspace around the contents of the repository, right? Well, it actually has. It's too sensitive to the prompt. If I ask it, hey, can you help me understand this repository? Then it's gonna, let's try. This repo. Then it does something that is a bit too generic. So it does something that is more like how to understand a repository of code in general, right? You first read the code, then install dependencies, then do this kind of stuff. That's yeah. So clone repo, parse the README content, map directory structure, review the main scripts, and it's so sensitive because I essentially what I'm like, I know it's just basically English knowledge, right? Like I just ask it, can you help me understand this repository, right? And it is doing that, but it's not really what I meant. And this can be frustrating. But here I ask it, can you help me understand the theory behind what's in this repository? And it actually did this really well because it now has a section of heat transfer fundamentals, radiation and emission theory, thermodynamic core laws, ML for sensor data, project theory synthesis, and computer vision integration. It actually has the right things for this repository, which is, which one did I use now? Maybe I'm gonna leave it already as the one that I want. Is this the one for the these guys called it thermoelastic, I think. Thermoelastic is the name of that, yeah. So thermoelastic, save. And as a description, I'm gonna add this. Cool. So, and I can make it public. That's all good. And then I'm gonna share it later as part of these, right? So we have one. Thermoelastic is one of the projects. All right, but I mean, it's so this is chaotic. There's too many entry points. There's too many things going on here. That's kind of your workspace, and I'm trying to brainstorm a bit in this direction, right? So let's think about this. What is a workspace? And the thing is, one thing that I'm feeling just too tempted about is Notebook LM. Notebook LM. Is notebooklm.ai or .com? Or notebook.l, no. No. What is the... Oh yeah, of course it's Google. Yeah, and here I have the stuff. Okay, advanced algebra. Uh, create a workspace. Okay, so when you create a workspace, you're in this case you have, and again, this is more like the whole premise of NotebookLM is centered around the sources, is centered around the material you want to start. So it understands that the prompt, that you need more than a prompt, right? I like, so one of the things that I like is that you right away you go and then you can just, it prompts you to add more stuff. And I think that I should be kind of doing the same here. I'm missing that. I'm missing, so how do they call this? They call this sources, right? And to be honest, sources. So I have files, right? Nodes. Let's think about there's two different user journeys, right? There's one that my first misconception, or my first assumption was, I am a recreational learner, so I'm gonna just prompt something quickly, and I want to get as quickly as possible into a session. But it turns out that's not really how people do use these, right? So the way that people rather approach this is like, I mean, yes, there is this kind of approach as well. So actually, one of the users, the one who then ended up being a partnership with Dantes.io, did actually go this direction. He was like, I want to learn about like galaxies and whatever, right? And so he right away went to do this and started a lesson. This is a bit of a different use case where you go in prepared. You have a set of material, right? But I mean, you can do this. You can add files. You can add notes, right? So you can do things like these. And on what? And then you have the sessions. I don't like to call these sessions. I don't like to call these sessions. I don't know how else I would call it. So NotebookLM has chat and studio, right? Studio is where you basically decide what things you want to transform your content to. Do you want to generate out of your sources? Do you want to generate a slide deck? Do you want to generate flashcards, etc., etc.? And for me, that's not like the workspace builder is basically, this is what should help you build the kind of sessions you want to have, right? I don't want to focus on content transformation because my premise still holds, which is you learn stuff the best way you want to, right? You want to use NotebookLM, use NotebookLM. You want to use, it's a kind of a bit of a different thing. When you start a lesson, you kind of go through a process of multiple chapters. Some of them might be a bit more practical. Some of them might be just simply stating things and concepts, getting into a conversation, and I want to preserve the essence of that experience, that user experience, because I think that's what makes the product a little more unique in comparison to others, right? But then why would you be in the workspace, right? You're in the workspace, and what can you do? You have the workspace builder, you have the performance section where you can ask it about performance, and then you have notes and files. That's all fine. So you can add things in here. So you can essentially add things, add notes, add files, and then I don't know that it works, so you can reference files here. It's probably something to test. So what if it's probably not working. So actually what I will do is maybe we'll actually go to Excalibur, and we'll do it just a quick thing here. So essentially, workspaces. So what we want to do is we want to be able to add files and reference them in the build chat for sure. I just don't know how we should call sessions. I kind of like, it's too much of a generic term. Okay, just give me a second. And back. Okay, cool. So I'm not too happy. I'm happy, but I'm not happy. I like workspace. Um, Sessions is a very generic kind of name, I feel like. Um, so maybe let's ask Grok. Uh, hey Grok, can you give me some ideas? Help me brainstorm a few ideas for an alternate naming to the concept of sessions in OpenLesson. Because so essentially in OpenLesson we've got workspaces, which are the old learning plans. Now we have like the workspace where you can just basically work on the sessions and all this kind of stuff. I'm not so sure sessions is the right name for the concept of a session, so to say, right? I just want to give it something maybe a bit more generic, that it's easy to grasp and understand if you're using also the tool for other use cases, like for example sales or hiring, right? Let's see what it comes back with. We'll read that out loud. Because then because I kind of see like the workspace where you could maybe have some tools, right? So start, teach back would be a tool. um, Teach back could be a tool, but then this concept of different sessions, and here it says start lesson, which makes no sense. It's not too obvious. You can do add custom instructions in here, but kind of like, yeah, I don't know, maybe I have to really settle with it like this. Let's see, can it read out loud?
Hey there. Totally get the vibe. Workspaces, the evolved learning plans, are the big container project space, and you want the things inside them, the individual work interaction units, to have a name that's way more intuitive and flexible than sessions, especially since you're eyeing expansion beyond pure education into sales, e.g., pitch practices or discovery calls, hiring, mock interviews or assessments, or even general productivity coaching workflows. The ideal name should feel generic and everyday, no heavy classroom vibes, action-oriented, something you work on, start, complete, or run, scalable across use cases without sounding forced.
Maybe work
Here's
items.
my brainstormed list of 8 strong alternatives, grouped loosely by flavor, with quick pros, cons, and how they'd play in OpenLesson versus sales hiring. I pulled from common patterns in LMS tools, CRMs, project apps, Notion Coder Style, and sales HR platforms for inspiration.
I'm not gonna, to be honest, I don't like any of them. I don't like activities, I don't like interactions, I don't like touch points. I hate episodes, but I like blocks and I like work units. Or you know what? I also like package or something or maybe units. Units is still like workspace, package, blocks, Notion style, a sales block, a hiring block, learning block, dialogue block, modular. Maybe these are modules. Maybe these are modules. Modules are nice because I think modules are nice. I think I'm gonna call it modules. Package, it feels too much like coding. I think I'm gonna call them modules. So you have modules in here, like practice modules. A module. Module is kind of like, I like blocks. So you have multiple blocks inside. You have blocks. So you have different building different blocks. Workspace builder, you're building blocks. I like blocks. I'm between blocks. I'm in between blocks. So sessions, blocks, modules. I'm between blocks and modules. Again, it's important because I need to make sure that it's easy to kind of showcase and sell, right? Because you're basically have the different blocks, and I think that I think that I would like, when you click on a block, I think you should be able to modify, sort of to fine tune that block a lot more, right? Because if we're expanding use cases, I want to enable people to design those blocks, right? I want to enable people to basically add custom instructions, to map specific files, maybe to do something specific in there, right? That kind of like helps you have more control over what you're saying. So I almost think like and I'm not so sure if Spruce Builder, performance nodes and files, if whenever you click on one of these, instead of expanding, I think we should get into more of a like a configuration section. To be honest, I'm not so sure. I think yes. And I think that what we have to do is blocks go inside the workspace builder. Performance, nodes, and files stay as like, single. I need to redesign this a little bit. So I think what I want to do is I want to either move sessions inside workspace builder. I don't know, that's a question. To builder, and then when clicking on a block, have much more customization options, or maybe just a pure prompt, like, because I want to be able for you to design these as a designer, for you to design these way more, right? Way more in detail, to really craft those blocks, because that's kind of also the user experience from a workspace designer, right? That you're designing that as much as possible. And still, I think the workspace builder chat makes sense, but then I probably want to move these inside, have some more space for tools and title and the title thing. So give this thing a bit more space and not have 3 sections. And then yeah, and then we have the workspace, basically the workspace builder, the performance, the nodes, the files. It's all good. I think that's it. I think that's it for today. I wanted to kind of do a bit of brainstorming around these. What else is important? I would like to see if I can integrate Rabbit Hole in here as well. Rabbit Hole is a separate tool inside OpenLesson. Oh, workspace. Rabbit Hole is a different tool in OpenLesson that right now doesn't work too well. But essentially, what it does is it's like a TikTok type of thing where you just scroll, but you scroll through questions, right? So you scroll through questions that are randomly picked, and then if you want to dive into a question like, so what if love is recognizing someone across different cuts? Sorry, the questions are still I have to work on the questions. What if urgency comes from seeing only one frame at a time? Interesting. You can dive in. And the idea of Rabbit Hole is that now you kind of get into a sort of left and right tree of questions, right? So you're essentially going down the rabbit hole. So it's like, okay, so but these questions are BS, like they are too generic, or this is stupid. So you're not answering questions, you're asking more questions, and that's kind of replicating the structure of a rabbit hole, right? So you go this way, that way, this way, that way, that way, that way, and at the end, Grok is gonna prepare final question, and so you have a final question that is being prepared based on the path of questions you took, and that's also, it doesn't matter, and then you get it right or wrong, and then you score points, you can share, and then you can also continue these in full OpenLesson, right? And I think this would be more like creating a workspace. So I have to see how can I full lesson workspace, how can I build, I don't know what it actually does. Yeah, okay, it creates a workspace out of these. So I don't know, maybe it doesn't make any sense, but maybe once you're in here, you can also just start the rabbit hole and then kind of replace, you do that as an exercise to kind of like reorganize the workspace. I don't know. I'm gonna wrap it up here. I have to think about, because the teach pack makes a lot of sense. The rabbit hole makes a lot of sense, and I think these are generic things enough. Now the only thing that I have to think is whether that's kind of good enough for a sales prep and in an HR case. I have to make one workspace for that. Design a workspace for someone who's preparing their pitch, the sales pitch, right? And have one workspace where there's basically people doing an interview and stuff like that. Alrighty, but I like it. I like how this looks like. I just need to rename lesson as well. I'll just it shouldn't call it lesson. So if we rename to blocks or modules, start lesson should just be like, should it be play? Should it be start? Should it be run? Like you want to run the block? Probably run. Probably. And I need to think about how to integrate the fact that you can run a block multiple times in theory, right? Because those are concepts. Who's talking? No, Siri, you're not. Shut up.
Okay.
Yeah, anyway, wrapping it up here. Yeah, that was a good brainstorm session. I need to polish a lot of the things in here, and I want to stay away from the Notebook LM premise of I start off with the content, I start off with the materials. Here, you're a workspace, you're designing a learning experience, you're designing a workspace, you're designing actually an experience, not that much like the content itself, right? And then you jump into the ILE, and then you go through the questions and all this kind of stuff. Alrighty, see you guys tomorrow.